Hi there, this is Alvin, and welcome to the Kickstart Commerce podcast, where we share search marketing and domain name investing strategies to help grow your business. In today's episode, our guest is none other than Ryan Evans, a longtime serial entrepreneur and co-founder of a web analytics startup named Tend. Today, Ryan and I discuss his early dabbling with investing in keyword and exact match domains, the various ventures that led to starting Tend, how and why Tend chose to use a .io domain versus a .com, and the impact of building a .io digital presence. So with that, Ryan, welcome and thank you for making time to join us today.
Alvin, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so to kick things off, Ryan, briefly tell the listeners a bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Ryan Evans. I am the co-founder of Tend, and we describe Tend as a tool that makes it easy for business owners to understand exactly what drives customers. So you described it very well. It's a lot of people think of it as analytics, but we try not to use the word analytics too much, just because that kind of conjures up images of complexity and charts and graphs and all that kind of stuff. So our tool is very simple. We make it easy to see, which marketing tactics drive revenue or other goals that people care about.
Good deal. So, how in the world, what's your background? How in the world did you get to Tend? Where did you start at?
Sure. So I have a background in finance from way back. So I studied finance in school, and out of school, I did investment banking and did financial related jobs. I was always kind of drawn to technology, even in the finance areas. I always found myself kind of looking at, new tools or software. And so I've always kind of been drawn to that, but I started out in finance. It's kind of a long story, but I got laid off from a job, and I started just doing consulting for the company that I was working with. And at the time, as you know, consultant means I will kind of do anything for money in the beginning when you're figuring things out. And so that's kind of what I was doing. I went out and I thought I was going to help people raise money and, do financial models and do some of the things that, I knew how to do. But when I took on a client, they had something completely different in mind. They said, "Hey, I have these luxury rental properties. Would you be able to help me rent those out?" And I thought, sure, if you'll pay me, I'll I'll figure it out. And that's kind of how I got my foray into the technology and the marketing space. So I started doing that, and just did some simple stuff of using AdWords to drive traffic to landing pages and building websites and that sort of thing. That's kind of how I got my start in that space, and it actually worked really well. And so I kind of continued on that path, and then using that expertise, I started some other venture that was in the coupon space, actually. So this is I'm dating myself now, but this was I like to preface and say this is kind of pre Groupon. So we weren't one of those copycat coupon sites. We were the OG coupon site. So I basically was doing the same thing, though. I was driving AdWords traffic to different pages and building that traffic up. And at the time, if you remember, you could get clicks for 10 cents or even less driving that traffic. And then I would go to business owners and show up to the burrito place with my laptop, open it up and say, "Hey, do you want to be on the site?" and charge them for it. So that's kind of how I got my start into the SaaS and the marketing space.
And so do you remember what was the name of the coupon company?
Yeah, I do remember the name of it. It was greatlocalcoupons.com.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't know how I found the name, or I don't remember the process, but it was. I always remember how long it was. Typing my email. It was kind of a long domain. It wasn't catchy. It wasn't a brand or anything. It was just as simple as I could be. And one thing you'll appreciate too from the domain space, when we originally started, I believe we were greatnorthsidecoupons.com or something like that. It was even more specific to the part of the city that we started in.
Oh, nice. So it was more geo or local, hyper local I guess you'd say, sensitive or focused.
Yep, exactly. And again, that was before, it was cool to say, hyper local or whatever. We just didn't know. I just, using my sort of simple mind, I thought, well, hey, I get these coupon books in the mail every month. These should be online. Well, I don't know why this isn't online. And so I literally, I would go through the coupon books and I would just like call all those people, just cold calling them and showing up to their place of business and selling them. But yeah, it was very local. It was literally in my neighborhood. And it's funny because it's been a long time now, but I still go to some of those places that are around today and, get pizza or whatever.
That's funny. So then, so that was that your only domain at that time, or did you start to dabble? Because I mean, I know you mentioned in terms of like you were learning to build websites, experimenting with AdWords, and just learning how to drive organic traffic. But then, I guess, did you catch on to any of like the exact match domain stuff
I
during that
did.
time?
Yeah. So, like probably most of your listeners, I developed an early and strong domain addiction, where it was just, it was like idea to, registering the domain. So during that time, as I had the coupon business, I also was doing consulting on the side, continuing that AdWords agency business, and that happened to just by nature of where I started, happened to kind of get into the luxury travel space. So as I came across those different businesses, I came across one of the businesses was fractional ownership. And so for those of people who are not familiar with fractional ownership, it's just, you might own a beach house and then, 10 people might go in on it and own it. And so the guy that I was working for was thinking about this fractional idea, and it was kind of a trend at the time. And so I started buying up all these fractional ownership domains, like a popular destination, fractional ownership, and, say like Lake Tahoe or something like that. And I bought up all these domains. And then along those same lines, just because of my AdWords sort of mentality, I bought up tons of different coupon domains and, travel domains, anything that I would, search. I would say, oh, I wonder if there's a domain for this. And so I bought up quite a few, thinking that, those were all going to, drive a ton of organic traffic. And I was going to have this empire of traffic that came in. Of course, what most people realize is that, well, yeah, theoretically back then when the exact match domains were ranking for things, theoretically you could rank for it, but that meant that you had to build a site and actually put some words at least on the page.
Right.
And that's just something that a lot of us just never get around to. It's like, oh yeah, I have this you know St. Thomas domain or something, but I don't have time to build content, for it. So that's kind of where most of my domains kind of stalled out, was having these ideas for the exact match domains, and then they just kind of sat there forever.
So did you park or redirect any of them?
I did park them. I went through a phase where, yeah, I parked them, but I don't think I made much money on them. I mean, it was, it probably wasn't covering uh, my registrar fee for the year. So,
Right.
I mean, I did experiment with that, but I never really, made any kind of effort to build out the domains to get them to rank or anything. There was a couple. I also did start to kind of get into more branded names, of thinking of words or whatever, and I did end up selling a couple domains in that space, which probably subsidized part of my addiction, but I'm not sure that it covered everything.
Right. It was nothing really to write home about or
Right.
sustain yourself on long term then.
Right. Well,
So,
and before people even knew what it was, and he still has. I think he has like some 3-letter domains, and he's sold some recently for a ton of money. So you hear stories like that, and it kind of pulls you in. But I've never had any kind of success like that.
right. Right. And so really, I guess from your standpoint, then it was really more of I guess you purchased more based on development than it really was in terms of truly investing and actually flipping those domains.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, had I been more sophisticated, and kind of understand how things work a little bit now, I would have taken a totally different approach. My thing was just that you know, I was in the keyword tools all day looking at, paid traffic. And so when I would see like a good search term that was, had some monetary value to it, I thought, oh, I wonder if the domain was available. And so that's just kind of was my,
That-
instinctual like response. It's like, oh, I'll just buy the domain. And it was, I felt good about it for 5 minutes. I mean, that's got to be 99% of that market is people doing kind of the same thing.
Right. The hand starts twitching.
That's right. That's right.
And remove or step back away from the keyboard. Slowly step away. No, that's good. So then you had the coupon business, which then parlayed, I believe, into your next venture, which is bite size PR. So tell our listeners a little bit about that. How you?
Yeah. So the coupon business did okay. I started hiring some telemarketers. I hired some salespeople, and we drove revenue to that. And it did pretty well for a while. But then Groupon kind of came along, and they did everything really well. They were based in Chicago, so they completely like destroyed us, really. So we had a kind of a tough time, and so I shut that down. And I still had the agency, which continued to grow just, based on word of mouth and, getting results for people. So that continued to grow. And I kind of developed a decent sized agency from that. And, but as I remember, we were doing this big project for a property that was owned by Hyatt, and it was out in Hawaii. And I thought, man, this is great. We got, finally are getting into some brand name clients, and we're doing some good work. This is wonderful. And I got a call from the person running the project, and they said, we got to have this. This was on a Sunday. I said, we got to have this done by Monday. And, they were making all these demands and just being kind of a general, pain. And I thought, you know what? I don't like this business. Like, this is exactly what I kind of, thought I wanted to do. And I was doing all the things, building toward that.
Right.
Just about when it was getting good. And I'm like, I don't really like this. So I started paring back that business a bit, and, firing troublesome clients and, paring back folks that worked for me and stuff and laying people off. And I had that business, and I wanted to get more into the SaaS slash subscription space. And so I started a company called Bite Size PR. Now, what Bite Size PR does is it helps businesses find media opportunities. So it helps people find ways to get mentioned in the press. So, if somebody writes an article or whatever, journalists need experts for, let's say, tax season. They'll say, oh, it's tax season coming up. I want to write an article on things business owners should keep in mind for taxes. And then they need to find a handful of reputable accountants to give them a quote or a perspective on a law or something like that. So a lot of folks are probably familiar with, there's Help a Reporter Out, and Haro. There's a few other services like that. And also journalists kind of will just put out the requests on Twitter and that sort of thing. So I started doing that and getting some success from it. So I would, just respond to these requests at the agent when I was doing the agency, and I started getting press. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. I wonder if you could make this into a service. And so that's what we did. We, kind of aggregated a bunch of different sources, and then we started our own source service, and did that and sort of went out and made connections with journalists. And so what that business does is connects the journalists with the business owners who have the expertise, and it just makes that process really simple and quick and relevant. I mean, a lot of the problem now is that there's infinite number of journalists who are looking for things, but as a business owner or a marketer, you have one very specific niche that you're trying to answer questions for. And so we make it really easy for you to just find the opportunities that are relevant to you and make it streamlined so that you can respond to those quickly and get press. So started doing that, and I used the knowledge that I had built from the agency days of driving traffic, and doing that to grow that business. And so that's kind of how Bite Size PR started, is just through that journey.
And now it's still active today, right?
Yeah. Yep. Bite Size PR is still active today. It's running. It's a nice little business. It's not a huge venture business or anything, but yeah, it does really well. We have a couple more services that we're working on now, and yeah, it does. It's a nice little business. I mean, I think it's kind of interesting, actually. I can get into this in a second, but both myself and my current business partner on Tend, we both have these other businesses, and I think it's interesting because we, in the software world and the technology world, we get so hung up on this growth, on this, raising a ton of money and growing as big as you can.
Right.
All that stuff is great. And but it's actually not sort of like the normal business. It's not sort of what people do in outside the tech world or even obsess about. So this business I'm actually really happy with it because it provides a nice income for our family. It's not going to grow a lot more, I don't think. I mean, I suppose that it could, but I'm happy with where it is. So as long as we maintain it and, continue to develop a little bit, but not go crazy with it and not, push it really hard, it's a nice little business, and I'm happy that it's there.
So it's a great lifestyle business then.
Exactly.
In terms of being able to provide, you not only provide for yourself but likely a few other people as well in terms of their lifestyle. And so then I guess from coupons to Bite Size PR, and I'm assuming that's bitesizepr.com, or is that?
That's right. Yep.
Gotcha. So then from there, where does Tend come into play, and how did it come to be?
Yeah. So, so I knew my current business partner on Tend, Marty Thomas, for a while, just kind of through mutual friends, and we were acquaintances, and we ended up working at the same co-working space in Chicago here, and we both, like I said, had these software products, and we aren't necessarily maybe the smartest guys on the planet, but we're also not complete idiots either. And we could not figure out how to get tracking right. Okay. So how to get, analytics right. Everybody uses Google Analytics, and we certainly use that. But Google Analytics, I have found, is like pretty difficult to get to tie, say, revenue to the different activities. Now, I know you can do it. There's ways to do it, but it was just it wasn't exactly what I wanted to see. We experimented with the other tools that are out there, KISS metrics and Mixpanel at the time, and all that kind of stuff. And it was a heavy lift to get implemented, number one. And so, it's, for a developer, it's say, oh, you're crazy. It's not that hard. Well, yeah, if you're a developer, it's not that hard. If you're a non-technical person, that means you have to get a developer, and then you have to tell a developer what you want them to do and implement it and get it set up right. And often you don't know exactly what to tell them what to do and how to do it. And so it just becomes one of these things that you never end up doing. You say, oh, I know I need to get, sort of my analytics straightened out, but you just never do it. So, we were kind of talking about this and how we were having problems just getting things implemented. And then once we did get it implemented, it was just not quite what we wanted to see. It's just, we wanted an even more basic, intuitive view into what was going on. And so we just started talking about it, and Marty, being the creator that he is, just started coding. I mean, this was, we were just sort of talking about the idea. It wasn't really even a formal business partnership or anything. He just started coding, and he built this, kind of first version. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And this works right away. And so,
Right.
so then, from there, we just, started, sharing it with friends that we have, who do similar stuff, and just say, hey, is this useful to you? Would you want to put this on your site? Was this interesting? And people did it, and they were very interested in it. I said, this is awesome. Like, this is something I've never seen before. I didn't understand, what was going, like how people were really finding me. And so they put it on their site, and, from there we said, okay, we started charging people, and we said, there's something here. So then, we formed a partnership and did that and got a little more serious about it. But that's kind of how it started. It really just started with this problem that we had, that you know this kind of stuff was harder than we thought it needed to be. And when we started, I mean, we were pretty naive. I mean, we were like, oh gosh, this is so simple, why isn't this out here? Well, 3 years later, now we know out there is that technically it's very difficult to implement and get right and get the features and make it work for everybody and all that. So
Right.
we've spent some good time figuring out all that stuff and scaling the data and all that. But at the time we're just like, oh yeah, this is a nice simple tool that works. So
So
that's
was so I guess in terms of how it started out, so was it more of that it was a bite size PR issue, or was it that it was a bite size PR customer issue, or both?
It was a bite-sized. It was a bite-sized PR issue, as well as my experience in the agency. So, we obviously had Google Analytics, installed for everyone, and we would do that. But the fundamental question that people had was, from a small business owner, you'd say, hey, we're doing all this great marketing, we're driving traffic, we're getting conversions for you, look, here's the number of conversions. And they just look at you like, okay, that's good, I guess, I don't know, but who are these people? Like, did they spend a lot of money, did they not spend a lot of money, did they, I don't know who they are. Or if you know, before, let's say, a sale happened, and you could say, well, hey, we drove all this traffic and they're very engaged in your site, and isn't that great? And they're like, well, okay, but do they ever convert? Are they going to convert, 6 months later or whatever? And so there was that just general sense of, I always felt like I was giving unsatisfying answers to people from the marketing space. And then from Bite Size PR is the same thing. So with Bite Size PR, we have customers that have literally been around for 6-7 years from the beginning, and then we have people who come in and they either don't convert from the free trial, or when they do convert, they might stay a month or two. Well, those, from a lifetime value perspective, those people are very, very different. And the issue is that some marketing drives those people who churn very quickly, and some marketing drives people who stick around for a long time. And so, it matters what, driving which kind of people, so it matters if you're driving someone who's very loyal and stays around and or spends a lot of money with you, or people who are just, tire kickers and they're in and out, or it's just like more of an impulse, sort of move for them. So, that is like kind of the beyond the setup, which was part of the pain for people. Then it was more saying, well, how can we clearly tie marketing to this, like sales, as was the fundamental thing that we started with. And a lot of people are familiar with attribution and these different attribution models. There's these multi-touch point, attribution models, and kind of dividing up your marketing spend into, how many times people touch your site and all that kind of stuff. And that
Right.
those tools are great. Usually they're expensive, and the second thing is they're complex. So you have to really know what you're looking for and what you're looking at, and you really have to have your tracking in place and everything for those models to be valuable. And so our approach incorporates attribution very strongly, but we show it in a more digestible way for people. So people think it's easier to understand when you're showing someone, hey, here's how people kind of navigated through your site, or here are the different things that they stopped along and did, before they got to this thing. And so a lot of it was just articulating that in an intuitive way, which I think we've done well.
No, that makes total sense, because I think you're right. I mean, you have to have some sort of technical background to really be able to understand Google Analytics, and then more importantly, to be able to understand how to use it to make it more intuitive.
Right.
And so that's just an interesting, um, you know, I guess challenge to attempt to solve, and that's what Tend has done. And so, where does the name Tend come from? Like, whose idea was that?
Yeah. So Marty and I, we spent more time. It felt very painful at the time because both of us are very impatient. We want to just, go and do stuff and like get to the next thing and whatever. But probably in part due to from my coupon days and whatever, I have realized, and also because of the success with Bite Size PR, I realized that a name is actually pretty important, and you need to think about it. Spend the time to think about it. If it takes you 2 hours to think about it, great. If it takes you 2 weeks to think about it, then you got to spend 2 weeks and think about it and get a good name. So we don't. I hope we didn't spend 2 weeks, but it sure it felt like a long time. So we were literally doing that. Okay, what's the kind of the concept here? And so the concept is that, with marketing, it's not, most marketing and what most businesses are doing are not doing this, Google AdWords landing page sale, just that one touch and then sale, one click and then you convert. It's usually not what's happening. So usually what you have to do is kind of nurture your visitors into people who are interested, and then nurture those folks into actual sales. And so the idea is kind of around nurturing, or we kind of came up with the idea of tending your garden, sort of thing, where you got to kind of go through and make sure everything is working throughout all those points. And so we came up with this idea, tend, and a few others around that. I don't remember the other ones, but where we were thinking about that concept. And then from there, it was just, we used some of the domain tools that were out there. I think at the time we used Domain Hole, which, we put in the word and they, appended and prepended, like all these like different, things and hyphens or not or whatever. And we got to, there was, again, it pains me to pay for domains. So the domain that was, $10 or whatever was tendinc.com. And so we got that, and neither one of us I don't think we were super thrilled about it, but any of the popular things that people have done. So when, Basecamp famously did their Basecamp HQ or whatever. Well, now all the HQ domains are gone, for any name plus HQ or whatever.
Right.
So, we went through a lot of those popular iterations or looked at what other people did. And most of those were taken. So we had Tend Inc. We were like, okay, it's fine. We'll go with it. And we just kind of thought we would have it for a very long time. So that's where we started. And then
So wait.
was.
So you said Tend Inc. So is that INC or is that INK?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so INC, like incorporated, even though we're not.
Okay.
Yeah. It just was like, I don't know. I guess this is one we saw a few people that had taken that approach, and we were like, okay, this is fine. But at that point we were happy with the name. We were happy with the concept. We weren't totally thrilled with the domain, but we were just like, let's just go with it. And we just sort of forgot about it. We had so many things to do. We were just like, okay, let's just go on to the next thing.
Yeah, because you got the name, you checked it off. You're like, hey, let's go build this business.
Right, exactly. So I don't know how long it was into it. Maybe it was a good while, though. I think maybe 6 months into it or so. We had somebody just cold email us and say, hey, I see you guys, you're called Tend. I have this domain, tend.io. Would you be interested in it? And, I said, yeah, sure. I'm interested in it. And they, I think I'm trying to think of their original. They wanted, $5,000 or $10,000 for it or something like that. And I, talked to my business partner and whatever. And I went back to the guy and I said, look, maybe you can get this. And, he was probably making assumptions about, whatever, about where we were at. And I said, maybe you can get this amount, but here's the deal. Like, we can give you $500 and that's just all we can give you for this domain. So if it's worth more or not, great, get it. I'll give you $500. I'll send it to you today. So if you want to sell it, I'm open. And so he said, yeah. And so we paid, I believe it was $500 or maybe $600, something like that.
Wow.
And we bought it, and we were both like, hey, we were pretty happy with that. And also at the time, now this was, Intercom was around. Intercom was what I remember, one of the first .io names that sort of stuck with me. Another one was Close. So Close.io, which is it's a CRM. So I was familiar with those software products, and they seemed legitimate to me. And I thought, if those guys are doing .io, and I saw a lot of other startups kind of popping up, I'm like, I think this has a little more staying power than some of the other more esoteric, extensions. So I thought, I think this is good. And,
Right.
I like the idea that it was, a word, 4 letters, and the IO kind of indicates to people, I think it has this idea that it's around technology or maybe consumer products or whatever, but it kind of has that tech sort of vibe to it. So anyway, we got it and we were super happy about it. And so
Well,
that's kind of
you certainly got a steal, in my opinion, a steal of a deal there. So I
yeah,
would imagine you were going to tell me something like, "Hey, I paid anywhere from like 1,500 to 3,000 for it."
right. That's kind of what we thought. I mean, we didn't know enough about it. We thought, I don't know. It feels like a deal. We don't know for sure. But regardless, even if it's not a deal, like we feel good about it, we're happy to pay it. Let's, done. Let's go on.
Now, did you do any research? I guess obviously you get this cold email in, but did you do any research of like you going out to go, hey, are there other companies that are actually building on .o? I mean, because obviously you have other extensions .ag, .cc, and on and on and on. And so, I mean, did you do any of that research?
I mean, I wouldn't call it research. I mean, I would call it like, hey, I see that there's other technology, other SaaS companies out there that are using this that seem legit. And if they're doing it, that's kind of good enough for me, in terms of, extension. Now we did we did some Googling around like, hey, what other companies are called Tend, or what other, domains could we get confused by? And there was a company, Tend.com, that was acquired by Glam, and I want to say they were like maybe a beauty product or health product or something in that space. So that was that was like totally different. And they had the .com, but it was fine. And
Did y'all try to purchase the .com, or no?
no, I mean, we didn't have any. I mean, we were not, whatever they were going to sell it for, we were not going to pay for it. So it
Right.
was literally one of those things. Like if somebody said, hey, at 10.com, we'll sell it to you for, 10 grand, which would be an amazing deal. We probably wouldn't take it. We probably wouldn't buy it, just because
Right.
we're kind of, I mean, it's not our primary business. So, we're not as familiar with it and, whatever, but we just wouldn't have paid for it because we have other things to pay for, starting the business.
Right. So then you secure Tend.io. Then, so what happened with tendinc.com?
So we still have it. We redirect the traffic from that. We used it for email, for like sales email and that sort of thing. But other than that, it's just being redirected to Tend.io.
Right. Now you mentioned sales emails, and that's literally how you and I met. Was I received an email from you, and I believe I want to recall that the email was thisistend.com.
That's right.
And
Yep.
I think you had reached out to me about an article or something or another where I'd like linked to Kissmetrics, and
Yeah.
you were making the suggestion that, hey, this doesn't exist anymore, but take a look at 10
Right.
and replace that link. And so it was interesting to me was obviously, I mean, I see the lens through domain names. And so once I saw the domain, I was like, well, why are they using this domain if they're using 10.io? So, I mean, so what's up with I guess the different email, the different domain versus, why would you not send email from 10.io versus this is 10.com?
Yeah. Yeah. So when we started the business, so the nature of our product is a little bit tricky. So it's very hard for us to build Google AdWords traffic to our site because we have competitors, like we compete with people who are in the enterprise space. So they can charge literally like 10 grand a month or whatever for their product. I mean, we compete with other people of the same size too, but because we compete with enterprise solutions, they have bid up all of the sort of analytics keywords and all that kind of stuff. Like that's not a super viable channel. I mean, there's still some parts of that we can execute on, but like some of the main things, like anything analytics is like a very expensive click. So early on, we said, you know what, we got our original customers from just kind of hustle, just talking to people that I know and whatever. Hey, try this out, putting them in a headlock, saying, look, just put this on your site, please. and see if this works. And kind of, that's like how we started. And then, as we once we got, sort of burned through our base of social contacts and just people that we knew and who were friends with us and whatever. And I said, I want to see if people are going to pay for this product, and I want to do it pretty quickly. And the fastest way that I knew how to do that was just cold email people. Is it just find people who are good fits for the product? Like, don't be stupid, find out who,
Right.
runs the company and do all that. And so
You
that's exactly
want
how
you want the best chance for success.
Exactly. And even if what I love about, and I still love cold email. But what I love about cold email is that even if the answer is no, and 95% of the time, even more than that, 98% of the time, the answer is no, or a more, I don't know if this podcast is family friendly, but a more, let's say, strong word for no. and
Right.
so even if that's the case, I like that feedback because a lot of people, and especially in this community, I feel like people are generally very understanding as long as you're being respectful of like what you're doing and pitching people who it makes sense to pitch and giving them something that it makes sense and show that you've done your homework to know what you're doing. People are very receptive in giving you feedback, even if it's not the right solution. So from doing that, like we would hear a lot of like, how's this different from Google Analytics? What does this do? Why does it do that? Does it have this feature? Does it have that feature? Oh, we can't use it because of this. Or, do you have a WordPress plugin or blah, 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 all these like different things. And we use that to really fuel our product development and tweak our marketing message and that stuff. But so this is a very long way of answering your question, but by doing that, by sending those cold emails, we were worried of making people mad and getting flagged for spam,
Right.
and then having deliverability problems with our email. So we have other domains outside of 10.io. So we use that thisistenn.com as one of them, as just a domain that we use mostly for sending outreach emails like that, or like how we sent to you, in case we irritate the wrong person or whatever, and that we have deliverability problems, because we really don't want to have that for our customers. That would be bad. So that's kind of why we do that. And then we redirect that to 10.io. We had one problem. We were using the 10 Inc. domain for that. And we had one, again, it's one of those things like I guess made the wrong person mad or whatever, which I completely understand. It's all fair,
Right.
fair in love and war, right? In business. So, so we had deliverability problem. And so then we just switched it to another, and we haven't had a problem since then. So it's been years, but yeah, that's why we do that.
So let me ask you this, Ryan. So have you noticed any difference having built Tend on using a .io domain versus a .com? I mean, has there been much of a difference? Or
I think because of the nature of our business, because we are in the tech space, and because other people use the .io, and also because our marketing is very direct from, it's either you have found it from an email that we sent, or a link that somebody sent you, or whatever. I don't think that it's been a bad thing, and I think too, I actually think the 10.io gives us more credibility than say like the tendinc.com would, or if we, had like 2 or 3 words, .com. I actually think for us, the 10.io is more memorable and is probably has served us better. Now, of course, we would definitely be more credible if we just had 10.com, and that would be great. But when, trading off your resources, if you say, look, I really only want to spend $1,000 on a domain, let me get the best, the most credible domain that I can get. I think that 10.io is probably, for our name, probably up there. So I think it's actually been a good thing for us. Now, if we were in a business that wasn't as or people weren't as technically aware, then it might be a problem. I mean,
Right.
like some of those other funky extensions, I
Right.
think can work. I think, but sometimes people get a little too cute for their own good. They get a little too clever, and they forget that a lot of people don't know what those weird extensions are, or how to type that in. So you're kind of relying on a branded search, which can be dangerous. Like for us, with a word like tend, I mean, I'm not even sure if we're on the first page yet for just if someone types in tend. So it can be, it can be confusing. But for us, I think it's been a good thing, particularly given the amount of money that we were willing to spend on it.
Right. Right. And that's an interesting point that you bring up in terms of, when you're searching on a brand such as Tend, because I know when I searched, I found tend.ag, which is like an organic form management software or, something comparable, but in a total different industry.
Right.
And so versus there, I look at it and go, well, if they were in the same industry or same target market, then we'd have, you'd likely have an issue of going, well, can people remember tend.ag or can people remember tend.io? I think in this scenario, anyway, it's that you are right. Most who are in the tech space, they do realize .io are mostly tech companies, whereas the .ag really is focused on ag or agriculture. So it even that tend to make sense, but I guess there's really some stark delineation between the two. And then you add in the fact that .com redirects to a glamour site. So it's, you have different target audiences that should they arrive there, they're going to know instantly and go, oh, this is not the place I need to be.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And that's an important distinction. I mean, yeah, if we had a competitor in the space that had the same name or similar name, we'd have to be much more thoughtful about it. One an interesting sort of side effect of having the .io, and I think this is probably specific to the IO, is that people think that's your name. Like, so people always
Right.
call us tend.io, even though our name is just tend. When you do add the IO to it, it does seem that people immediately think of the IO with your name. So I think when I think of Close, the CRM software, I think close.io. I always do. I don't know why that is. I think just because it's maybe unique, or that like with names like that there's probably a .com, so you want to make a distinct. Harder to find. So I think it's an interesting thing. And I haven't noticed that with other extensions as much, where people automatically just spit that out of their mouth when they say it. But I definitely have noticed it with .io.
Right. Yeah. Cause I mean, you have like slither.io.
Mm-hmm.
And then so pretty much anytime I hear a .io, you're right. I mean, people, whatever the brand is, it's that brand .io. So
Right.
it's really not even that brand. It's just that it becomes a part of the brand and it becomes recognizable very much like .com.
Right. It is almost like what's interesting about it is just because of the way that, some of the early companies, at least that I'm familiar with, it is a signifier. It has a specific meaning to me anyway, that what you're talking about um, is software or is in that space, or so that's what's kind of interesting about it, is that when I say randomcompany.io, I assume it's a software company or something like that, and it kind of defines it. Slither you're talking about. But when you said sliver.io, instantly I know, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. So
Right.
it's kind of like helps define companies a bit.
Right. And so now obviously with bite size PR, it's a lifestyle business. So what's next for 10.0? I mean, are you foreseeing it as a lifestyle business, or is it something that's going to grow to have thousands of customers, multi-million dollar company? I mean, what's next?
Yeah. I mean, so the lifestyle business thing is funny to me. It's a funny word to me because I mean, one person's lifestyle is not another person's, So I want
Right.
10 to
Right.
I want 10 to be as big as it can be. We intentionally did not raise money for 10, and I really find this conversation pretty interesting. So um, it's not that we want 10 to be small. It's there's a few different reasons for it. One reason, and I found this like with bite size PR. So when I was early in bite size PR, I actually we talked to, not even intentionally, but by accident, we talked to somebody who's a local venture capital company here in Chicago, and they just, in passing, one of the analysts that worked there, they said, you guys could raise $1 million for this easily. Like it's you have the growth and whatever. And I just, it just wasn't appealing to me for a variety of reasons. And I think back on that decision now. Now, who knows what could have happened? Like maybe we would have raised $1 million and we would have spent it and hired big people, and it would have turned into a different thing, and it would become like a big thing. Definitely is a possibility. But the way it has shaken out, I don't think that would have happened. I think that what would have happened is we would have raised $1 million. We would have hired a bunch of people. We would have grown faster without question. But we never would have hit that sort of VC, magic number, and to then raise another round, to do another round, and then to sell for a bunch of money. So I just don't think it was on that path. Now, because it's not that type of business, for me, even forget the lifestyle for a second, from a pure financial perspective, I think it's actually worked out better for me, because in the VC route, what we would have been left with is nothing. Like you wouldn't be, building the company for profitability. You wouldn't be, concerned with that kind of stuff. And it probably would not have worked. And I would have spent, several years on it and been left with nothing and whatever. And that's okay. And that's where, you know, 99% of those VC sort of stories end up that you don't really hear about. And so from a lifestyle perspective, I like, that's one thing. But even from a just ambition, sometimes I feel like it's best to bootstrap and grow a little bit slower, because if you look at the probability of success, I just feel like it's higher, even weighted with it. So the chances of hitting the $1 billion company are infinitely small, and I don't think that people, especially younger entrepreneurs, appreciate how difficult and how small that is, even if you raise a boatload of money.
Right.
So for us, for Tend, it's more about maximizing, our chance for having the greatest amount of money. And so for example, if Tend ends up becoming, a $20 million company, myself and my business partner will be very happy with that. Like, that would be great, you know? And so it's, that's like part of it. So the long answer to your question is that we want Tend to be as successful as possible. We want it to be as big as possible. But we are also mindful of, minimizing our risk. And I feel like part of that is bootstrapping, growing at a pace that's sustainable, where you're not, doing crazy things and whatever. And so, and if at the end of it, oh, we really screw things up and, we don't become $1 billion company or whatever, that's okay. If we have like,
Right.
a several $1 million company or whatever, that's fine. And it isn't necessarily for, I wanted to sort of preface all that because it's not necessarily for lifestyle reasons, but it is for maximizing the probability of having the greatest amount of money. I think it actually makes sense from that perspective. So sometimes I feel like the lifestyle sort of moniker, puts people into this place where like, oh, well, you didn't raise money because you're not ambitious or because you don't want things to be huge.
Right.
Not necessarily. Like sometimes it's just the nature of the business, or you're looking at probabilities differently. So it's like if
Correct.
you own 100% of a $10 million company, to me, that's just as good as having 10% of a $100 million company, through dilution and whatever going to the VC round. So um, that's what. Now, the second thing is I wanted to preface that because without that context, like it's easy to just sort of do the typical sort of lifestyle business spiel. But that being said, both my business partner and I have kids and a family, and, we have other businesses and we like to do different things. So, it is our I guess work style does mesh with sort of like a lifestyle company in that, no, we're not going to work 80, 100-hour weeks. Like we're just not going to because, we have a family, and we're not going to, sacrifice the time that we spend with family and other things for that. So, that is definitely something that we value. I I think that it's actually, I would make the argument that it's a completely separate thing from the sort of, how people usually talk about a lifestyle business, because I think even in lifestyle companies, I can't speak for everyone, but I think a lot of those lifestyle companies want to be as big as they can,
Right.
and even though, so I don't know. So that's kind of like where we come from. The bootstrapping and stuff is not necessarily for the family reasons. It's actually still kind of financially motivated, because I do think you could have a VC company and still limit your time to some extent, with the family and all that kind of stuff. But then two, the VC model, then the VC model doesn't really, I don't think fit for where our company size is ultimately going to be. And then finally, you know, yeah, I mean, we want to, if we want to go watch the kids baseball practice on a Friday, yeah, we want to be able
It's
to,
like, let's
not,
do it.
yeah, not feel guilty. And I think there's sometimes like a misconception that if you're at a VC funded company, you can't do that. I don't think that's
Right.
necessarily true, but, I don't want to feel guilty. I don't want to have, restraints, or, or feel like, oh yeah, I really probably shouldn't be doing this. I don't want that feeling.
No, 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 and that makes perfect sense. I mean, I think that there's something to be said for life work balance.
Mhm.
And at this point, I look at it, I go, it's probably not even work for you as much as it is a passion.
Oh, definitely.
Because you're
Yeah.
getting to, journey down this path of and turning over rocks and learning different things, learning more about different markets, different customers, while building this, business called Tend. And so, wrapping up, Ryan, I mean, if you had, knowing everything that
Mhm.
if you had to do everything all over again, would you do anything different?
I mean, yeah, I hate to give one of those like sort of like, I don't know, touchy feely answers, but I don't think so. I mean, I think that everything that you do, good and bad, mistake or perfection, kind of forms where you are. So I'm very happy with where I'm at in terms of everything, family, friends, business, doing the stuff that I want to do, living where I want to live, all that kind of stuff is, I am exceedingly happy. And so, if I did a lot of stupid things, which I definitely did, getting me to this place, then I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I do think I am a believer a lot in that, like we talked about sort of like the agent, it would be easy for me to say like, yeah, I wish I didn't blow a bunch of years, like trying to start that agency or whatever, doing that, getting that to where it was. Yeah. I mean, okay. But along with that comes like a conviction of what you want to do or not do. And along with that comes like forming, so where you want to be and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And so it's really hard to, it's kind of like the Back to the Future, with Marty McFly. Like, yeah, I don't want to screw with with the past a lot, to end up in a different spot.
Correct. That's awesome to hear. And I asked that question knowing, to a certain extent of how even likely before the coupon company, but it's definitely the coupon company, how it led from one to the next, to bite-sized PR, and then how bite-sized PR is led from where it is to 10. And so it's always one of those things like, man, when you probably don't realize it while you're in it, but then it's moments like these that you kind of, you take a step back and you look and go, oh wow, yeah, that did play into, these opportunities played into the next opportunity, whether good, bad, or ugly.
That's right. Yeah. And I've thought a lot about this too, because I have people who are, starting. I talk to them sometimes and, just like, hey, what should I do here and there, whatever. And so much of the advice is very like, wow, you got to focus on, the thing that you're good at and just do that. And I sort of think that the advice should be more like, do a bunch of stuff. Just it kind of doesn't matter what you do.
Right.
but be energetic about it. Like throw
Correct.
yourself into a bunch of things and do it. And yeah, you're definitely going to screw like so many things up. But I almost feel like that's just part of it. And sure, some people get lucky, or
Certainly.
in that. And I don't mean to be lucky in a condescending way, but like some people get lucky in that, they started out on this thing that they had expertise and passion on, and boom, that's the one that hits, and it takes them throughout their whole career. And that's great. I think that's exceedingly rare. And I think that, a lot of it is throw yourself in there, be energetic, like try things that are uncomfortable, like do a bunch of things. But yeah, you're going to waste a ton of time and screw up a ton of things and wish you had done things totally differently and seen this opportunity and not did that and whatever. Sure. But that's all part of it, man. I mean, that's just the way it is. And if everything does go perfectly and works out great for you, I mean, the crazy thing about it is like, you'll probably be bored. It'll probably feel boring. So I don't know.
No, that's awesome. So then what would your advice to someone starting a business and thinking about strictly using a .io domain as their digital presence? What would your advice be?
I think that if you are going to trade off, say, the .com for the .io, you want to make sure that you're actually trading up in, quality of the domain. Meaning, like, if we were to say have like tendinc.io or something, like that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if um, so if you're not going to go with the .com, then, understand that you are making a trade-off. I do believe you're making a trade-off. And so with that trade-off should come truly a better domain. And, so maybe instead of 3 words, it's 2, maybe it's, a normal spelling instead of a funky one, or, whatever. And I think that's part of it. And then secondly is to be cognizant of what industry you're in. So if you are not in an industry where people are going to understand what an .io is, then you shouldn't do it. You should probably go for a .com and just, compensate with, an inferior domain.
No, that's good advice. It's good advice because I know that there will be many people who will hear this and they hear your story, they hear your success, and then the next thing the hand starts itching,
Right.
and you're sitting in front of a keyboard, and here it is you've purchased, you know, all sorts of extensions,
Yeah.
all sorts of domains across all sorts of extensions, and then it's kind of like, well, that was not necessarily what Ryan was, nor I were insinuating to go and do,
Right.
but it's what fit the situation, and so you really have to understand, I guess, what your situation is,
Yeah.
and clearly, so that you can make the best decision for for your business. So last but not least, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
I mean, not really. Like, if I'm happy to connect with folks on Twitter. I love Twitter. My handle is just Ryan Evans. If you want to take a look at Tend, I think you know the domain not now, but it's tend.io. And if you have any questions or anything like that, we're actually starting kind of a series, and this is kind of funny because this is how we met. We're starting this to do a series of blog posts soon, which are around experiments, around like trying these different techniques, around different marketing techniques, and kind of putting them to the test and seeing actually how well they work. So if anybody has any ideas around, hey, I've heard of this thing, I'd be interested to know what folks are thinking about, because there's a pretty good chance that we'll run this experiment to see, which marketing tactics work, based on, because you always do this, you read all these different posts, like, oh, does this work? Does that work? We're going to be testing some of those out. So if anyone has any good ideas or things that they're curious if that works, let me know. My email is just Ryan at the domain at tend.io. Let me know, and I'll at least engage with you and maybe put it on the list of things to try, and then we're going to show kind of the results of it, including the way that we met. So we're gonna publish that, how it worked, how we did it, and all that kind of stuff.
Nice. Well, I definitely, like I said, if anybody has any ideas, certainly feel free to contact Ryan. And with that, man, we're out of time. So Ryan, thank you again for joining us today and just sharing your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, thank you, Alvin. This has been fun.
Yeah, definitely. And we wish you and Tend.io much success. And listeners, thank you for tuning in to Kickstart Commerce, where we share search marketing and domain name strategies to help grow your business. Last but not least, please subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Podbean. Also, please visit kickstartcommerce.com to subscribe to the weekly newsletter, sharing tips and tricks about the disciplines of digital strategy. Thanks, and that's all for now.